yield back.
Mr. Garcia.
Thank you, Chairman and Ranking Member, for hosting the hearing today. In recent years, our transportation systems have been undergoing a transformation. From the COVID-19 pandemic, which stunted many transportation sectors, to the historic IIJA funding, which renewed investment in modern infrastructure. In the Chicago area alone, we received grant funding through IIJA to make transit more accessible, improve commuter rail infrastructure, and deliver over 50 clean school buses to Chicago public schools. Reimagining a modern, resilient, and sustainable transportation sector will require us to examine our workforce. In 2022, I introduced the Giving Disadvantaged Business Opportunities for Success Act, which would strengthen opportunities for minority and women-owned businesses. I'm glad that DOT is finalizing a rule that would allow more businesses to qualify as DBEs. Ms. Benford, how would increasing the DBE network cap and streamlining the certification process benefit the construction industry and the larger transportation industry?
Thank you. As I mentioned before, DBEs are a big part of our program. We are required to use them. Wyoming, we have a lot of people registered as DBEs, but again, when we go through the bid process, we only get 1 to 5 bidders. So anything that can ease the process for a DBE would be greatly appreciated.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. Continuing on the topic of workforce, your testimony mentions challenges recruiting sufficient workforce to keep up with the demand of infrastructure projects. Has Washington State DOT identified the factors contributing to hiring challenges, and how have you approached a solution to this workforce gap?
Congressman, yes, we have identified some issues. Wages are an issue. Wages are going up in the private sector. We're not seeing the comparable increases in the public sector. They're somewhat restricted. The availability of people, it's a competitive environment. You know, in my organization, I have hundreds of snowplow operators. They're out there very busy as we speak. All of them have a commercial driver's license, and I am competing with the private sector. I'm competing with cities and counties and port districts. I lost a whole bunch of heavy freight mechanics just a couple of years ago to the folks down at Hanford, the federal government participating in the cleanup. They were paying more than us. So pay is an issue for us. Credentialing in the marine industry, we run the largest ferry fleet in the United States, about 24 million passengers a year. And we operate 21 boats up to a boat that carries 3 that carry 202 vehicles and 2,500 people. The crew on those boats, to apply for a job, you have to have a transportation worker's ID card, which requires a background check, which takes time and money that people don't have when they're looking for work. So we do a lot in that space to provide better educations. We're again reaching out to high schools, maritime academies, getting young people involved and stepping up and getting that credential so that when a job becomes available, we can move them to it. We've had to move training in-house. I used to hire people with the CDL. Now we hire people and train them on our dime. In the marine industry, to advance in Washington State ferries, you used to have to take all of the training on your own time, and you had to pay for it yourself. We've brought that in-house as a way to bring people in. Our pre-apprenticeship support services, we're seeing more and more women and people of color there. We require on all of our contracts a minimum of 15% of the labor hours that are worked to be worked by apprentices. We achieved that goal, and of those apprentice hours, 45% of those hours are worked by women and people of color.
Thank you for that. As you have stated in your remarks this morning, it's important that we be inclusive and especially mindful of those who have been left out of these job opportunities. What do you think Congress needs to do to ensure that recruiting is inclusive and diverse? And you got about 5 seconds.
You know, I believe the statute is in place. It can always be improved. From my perspective, it's the application of that statute by people of goodwill that makes a difference. We, in Washington State, approximately 77% of Washington State, consider themselves to be white. They identify as white. So about 23% of our community is people of color. At the Washington State DOT, when I came on board, 10% of the workforce were people of color. We've been able to raise it in the last 3 years from 10% to 15%, and we continue to work on that. The rules, the laws are in place. It's the application of those laws over time that's going to make a difference.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Chair, for your indulgence. Yield back.
Gentlemen, this time.